Joey Davidson, Casey Cunningham. How are you?
I'm great, Casey. How are you?
I'm great. I just love the fact that we're sort of related with our dogs, right? I have an Aussie
Absolutely.
Doodle. You have an Aussie Doodle. Now you have a Golden Doodle.
I
I
do.
have a miniature Schnauzer that acts like the Golden Doodle, right?
Yes.
Anyway, like a big boy, but he's a little tiny guy. But mine was I didn't want any shedding in the house, so that's how I ended up with Doodle.
Well, we
So
went the same direction. So, we talked about earlier the size of these dogs, and I love a big dog, and I love the fact that they don't shed. But prior to our doodles, we had a Great Dane, which was a monster. So when people tell us now your dogs are huge, we sometimes take back a little. We're like, wait a second, we had a dog that was the size of a horse prior to these dogs. So, but yeah, I love the fact that you and I are air quotes related by
right.
virtue of our dogs.
Well, I love dog people, period.
Yeah, me
And
too.
I'm wondering, I should do a survey around the country to see how many presidents of mortgage companies actually are dog people. Maybe there's a theme there.
Oh
So,
gosh, right now I like everybody, Casey. I don't know that I want to know that about everybody.
I got you. I got you. That's true, right? Where's our cat people? No offense, anybody listening in. If you love cats, I'm not gonna say I love cats. I've never had a cat, but I love dogs. Let's
Cats
put
need
it there.
homes. Cats need homes also.
Cats need homes, right, right, right. Well, Joey, we're in some crazy times right now. And I think, as you reminded me, it's been almost 10, 12 years since I guess I spoke at one of your conferences.
You did, yes.
And gosh, that's a lot of time since I've seen you and caught up. So today's going to be real special for me to just really get into the mind of what it's taking to inspire your team and to build a great culture. So let's start off with about culture. I believe it is the most defining factor for success today. Can you define your culture today?
I can. I think to understand the culture of our company, you have to remove people as employees who work together first and understand that we are all human beings created and loved by God,
Mm,
which makes us equal and deserving of the same amount of respect and kindness. And I think if you can grasp that we're all equal and created and loved by God and
mm,
deserve the same level of respect and kindness, and then place us back into the work environment. If you can grasp that first part, everything else seems to work itself out when you assign titles and functions and things like that. That would be probably the way that I would describe our culture.
wow, I love that. I love that. It's interesting. We are equally yoked, and I
Yes,
think
we are.
we are blessed by our one and only Father. And
Yes,
so, as you run your company today, the last 2 years, right?
yes.
Man, what an amazing 2 years for us in the mortgage space, not so much for many industries. So, in the last 2 years, things shifted from
Yes.
going to primarily, I'll say, in corporate office to remote. How have you shifted over the last 2 years that's impacting your culture?
I think anytime there's change like that, we as leaders, as companies, we have a choice to make, and we can be paralyzed by the change or we can embrace the change.
Mhm.
And we were forced, all industries that were subject to the work from home or the COVID restrictions had to embrace the change. And our people are so important to us, not necessarily on a work level, like I spoke before, but on a personal level. They're very important to us. And one thing that we realized is when you're not in the office, a lot of things happen in the office, and you can kind of judge how somebody's doing personally by their body language, do they have a smile on their face? Are they in a bad mood today? And it's easy to go up to them and say, "Hey, is everything okay? If you
Mm,
need to talk, you want to come in and share with me." And when you don't see them anymore, you don't get that benefit of seeing that body language and knowing how they're doing. So we've had to be extremely intentional to preserve that personal relationship. We can judge work. We can tell who's productive and who's not productive. We have the technology to do that. And that's a side component. We're more concerned with how are you personally, because we know they're going to perform at their best when they're doing well personally. And So we've been very intentional at every leadership level of doing these check-ins, taking people's temperature and making sure that they understand that there's an open avenue for talking. Our HR department has been extremely, they've done a great job of providing avenues and technology, mental health opportunities. And one thing that we did that I love has very little to do with work, but I think in the end, it helps their performance, is we came up with a platform for exercise, if you will. So all of a sudden, nobody's commuting anymore, right? So we have some newfound time in our day. And for me, that was about an hour each direction. So two new hours in my day. And what am I going to do with those 2 new hours? Well, some people may say, we want you to work. Well, we don't want you to work during that time. You were productive during the 8 hours that you gave us prior to the pandemic. Let's not go crazy and put in 10, 12 hours a day. Let's find something useful to do with that time. So we came up with a platform that, like other exercise platform, tracks your steps. And we've had some cool competitions within the company. That maybe this state against this state, or this department against this department. And we've had a blast with that. And that app also has a chat feature in there. So there's some trash talking that goes on between departments, and but it's been motivating also. And for me, my therapy is exercise. And I think that's the same for a lot of people out there. So that's just one example of what we've implemented in hopes to keep our culture intact and to pour into people on a personal level.
You know, it's really interesting. I just posted about culture and being intentional.
Yes.
And that culture is getting shaped, whether you're intentional or unintentional, it's being shaped.
Yeah.
And never before, and you absolutely, we are so much in alignment, never before in the history of, I'm going to say of the world, have we been isolated in our work. But in our new era, I'm going to call it the new normal, if you will, is people are now sitting at home. They don't have the camaraderie, the connection, and we have to be super intentional to create that connection. So I applaud you, number one, that you're doing it on that personal level, and that's what keeps people together. And you know, it's, so I'm really big. I mean, we just won again and another culture award, and I don't take it for granted. I mean, I think we're at 28, which is really exciting, and I'm going to give all accolades to our Heavenly Father and our leaders that are in the company who make people feel connected.
Yes, that's
anyone
awesome.
Listening as a leader, an executive leader, or even if you're in operations or sales and you're listening to this, really think, what's your part in connecting with others? What are you doing to reach out to someone you may not see every day, but you used to see every day?
Yes.
And create a 15-minute, check-in in the morning. How are you doing? What's your day going to look like? That alone, that simple task of just connecting each day for even 15 minutes, as you said, you can see body language, you can see how they're feeling. And it's really interesting. I've been watching in all of our meetings, I'm sure you are as well. And you see this lineup of all the associates, we call them associates versus employees, but you see all the employees on the screen and you're looking at it and you can tell just from here up whether they're going to have a good day or a bad day, or they're struggling. And so and I'd say for all executive leaders, are you looking very intentionally to go, who needs me to make a phone call?
Yes.
I
want to share one more thing that I'm personally proud of, and it may sound a little cheesy, but years ago, with what we call our leadership team, and that's about 10, 12 people, that we started an exercise. And back then we called it Challenge Wednesday. We just chose Wednesday to be the day to do this. And the purpose of Challenge Wednesday is to get all of us outside of our comfort zone and to do what we call make an emotional investment into somebody that you know. And I'll explain what that emotional investment means. So my challenge would be, I could choose Casey Cunningham, and I could call Casey and say, Casey, I'm calling you for one purpose and one purpose only. And here's the purpose. I've admired you for a long time. I admire the fact that you don't hide from your faith. And I admire the fact that it's important to you to pour into the people in your company and to make them better people as a result of your leadership. And that's the only reason I was calling you, Casey. I'm going to let you go. You have a great day, but that was it. So many times I think we all love compliments, but I think As much as we love them, we hesitate to give them sometimes, even though we know the impact it's going to make. So part of the rules of this emotional investment is you can't sandwich it behind two work things. You can't call somebody and say, hey, I'm calling to check on the Jones file. By the way, I appreciate you so much and what you do. Call me back on the Jones file when you get a chance. You can't do that. That dilutes the whole reason for the phone call. So you have to make an intentional phone call to make a sincere emotional investment in somebody. And what we figured out through that exercise, that did a lot for Casey Cunningham when I called her and told her that.
It did. It felt good, even though you were just pretending.
But it did more for me. That I took the time to do that. And I realized that I had an impact on Casey's day. And I didn't have to do that, but it makes me feel better that I did something useful today that made somebody else's day better. So we started that years ago. We don't call it Challenge Wednesday anymore because it almost seemed forced when we were doing it at a time or a day during the week. I think that people understood the impact that it had, and hopefully it's become a part of just what they do now. So
I'm not kidding, Joe. You're going to make me cry.
Well, sometimes I get emotional myself when I talk about it. So.
Well, I can give you a new name for it, because I believe words are either weapons or they're wisdom.
Absolutely.
They either build people up or they can beat people down.
Yes.
And I believe as leaders, our role sincerely is to build people up.
Yes.
And if they may make a mistake or they fail in something, we go, okay, fail forward. We learn from it. Let's move on. Make it a safe environment where we build people up and let them flourish. And if they're not flourishing, we help them out. Not in a mean way, but in a very loving, sincere way.
Sure.
I'll give you, so you could call it Wow Wednesday, words of wisdom.
And I like that.
So my family and I, we do every Wednesday, my kids and husband, every Wednesday, we take our kids for breakfast because they have a late day at school where they get in at 9. So we are very intentional because we believe it's words of wisdom that Wednesday morning where we're together as a family, where we can pour into them. And that's so awesome. And I'm loving how you've applied it at work, where you're not sandwiching it in between work.
Yeah.
What a brilliance to really connect your leaders and your employees together to say, hey, I'm valued and appreciated and recognized.
Yes.
I mean, who wouldn't want to work there?
Yeah, okay, we hope that's the case.
You're gonna, what an amazing man you are. An amazing leader.
That makes me feel uncomfortable.
I know, right? It does when people say it, but it truly, because, you know, I get the privilege of being in this industry quite often and serving it. And when I ask, you know, what's the most important thing to you? Of course, we're for-profit companies, but if you love and value your people, profit will follow.
Absolutely.
And so let me ask you, so as a leader who's passionate about serving others, what do you think is the most important attribute for leaders besides loving their people?
We're in an age of self-promotion. Social media has set us up for that.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very slippery slope when the leader gets involved in self-promotion. Maybe there's some component of that that's necessary to attract people to your company, but not in my world. This setting is uncomfortable for me because I don't like talking about myself, because it's not about me. So I think one of the qualities that I've had to be careful with is introspection. And I think it's important to not try to portray an image of perfection. And a lot of leaders do that. And I've studied other leaders, and it kills me when I study somebody or watch a video and it says, okay, she gets up at 4:30 in the morning and she runs 10 miles and she comes back and writes in her journal for an hour. And then she does meditation or prayer for 30 minutes. And then she runs another 5 miles. And then she works for 12 hours just in time to go watch her son win the state championship at whatever. And yeah, you see that. And that's the image that a lot of leaders want to portray. So I think being introspective and understanding where our weaknesses are, but I had to be really careful with that, Casey, because I think you can be too introspective to the point that it can affect your confidence. And I went through a season of that probably I concentrated too much on my weaknesses. So there's a limit, I think, on introspection. We have to give ourselves some credit sometimes, but I think it's very important for leaders to understand that we're real people. And again, back to what I said at the very beginning, as a person, we're equal to everybody else that we're serving.
Yes. I've always wanted to, I'm going to guess, I don't know if this is true, but I'll also share mine. I have learned as much from bad leaders as good leaders.
Yes.
What I didn't want to be and
Yes,
what I wanted to be.
absolutely.
And so let me ask you, what's the one thing that you've learned as a leader, whether it was from someone else or your own personal failings, that has helped you get where you are today? That one lesson.
Gosh, I'm having to exercise it right now. And that is the environment that we're in the industry right now. From most people's viewpoint, it's not good. We're coming off of 2 record years, and we go into the highest inflation that we've seen in 40 years, the highest interest rates that some people have seen in their career, the lowest inventory in housing that we've seen in quite some time.
Right.
So on the surface, things don't look good. And when fear hits, I think you find out where your leadership is. And I was in the military earlier in my life and had the privilege of serving our country in Desert Storm. And I remember when I was on the helicopter, me and my platoon, and I was a young guy, I was a private, I was at the lowest level. And we were on the helicopter when the war actually started, and they were taking us over to drop us off. And I was scared to death. And I was looking around the helicopter at my cohorts, my peers, and everybody was scared. And that didn't make me feel good. But I was sitting next to my platoon sergeant, Sergeant Moore. Love this man. And I turned and I looked at Sergeant Moore, and he had a smile on his face. And he looked at me and he said, "It's game time." And just to see my leader wasn't afraid, that calmed me. And I think it's important that in times like this is our Super Bowl as leaders right now. This is when we shine. And sometimes I tell our leadership team, and I know they don't like it, but they also know that I'm being a tad bit sarcastic. I tell them when things are great, in 2020 or the last part of 2020 and 2021, when volume is abundant, everybody's making more money than they've ever made. I tell our leadership team, because I have a great relationship with them, we don't need you right now. We don't need you. Now, that's not true. We always need leaders.
Sure.
But their time to shine is right now. This is when people are looking for leadership. They want somebody to follow right now. So I've learned from Sergeant Moore and from others that in times of uncertainty, in times of doubt, in times of fear, you can't sit in that emotion for very long. You have to take action quickly. And as a result, your people are expecting that of you. And so that took a while. Now, I still have situations where there's uncertainty and there's fear and there's doubt, but I have to get back past that quickly and remember that God's put me where I am for a reason. And I have to honor that calling and get out of the spirit of fear, because from at least my beliefs, that doesn't come from God. And so I have to get past that and lead like he wants me to lead.
You have made me cry twice now. Special man. I love the fact that you didn't use this word, but that image of perfection of saying, hey, we're human beings.
Yes.
We're leaders who are doing the best we can with the gifts we've been given. Allow some grace and be vulnerable. And I believe in being an authentic leader, which means sharing your thoughts, sharing your feelings, and asking people when we make mistakes, give us grace.
Yes.
Just like we will give you grace. And quite often, some people don't understand that until they're in the moment. We are in a time where it's game time.
Yes.
And leadership has got to step up and lead and take action, because everyone's confidence is built based on how we lead. That they're watching, going, what's going on, and how do we adjust, and what can we do? And I believe that times like this are the opportunity of a lifetime to gain market share, to refine your skill set. I just had the privilege of speaking at a conference, and I got to listen to one of the economists right before I went on. And he said, everybody needs to not compare where we are right now to the last 2 years. Compare
Right.
where we were in 2019, and we're still having a great year.
Yes.
We just came off of 2 unprecedented years, and that comparative is easy to make, going, oh, we're down, but are we? And so I think we can really applaud where we are now compared to 2019
Absolutely.
and lean into it. And this is
Absolutely.
when you hone your skills, you totally invest in yourself and growing. So, well, let me ask you the final question, because I could be on the phone with you for hours. You've got a future generation that we're trying to build, these leaders. Are you doing anything specifically to help build the future leaders of your organization?
We are. Future leaders, for me, are pretty easy to identify. People say that leaders aren't born, leaders are made. And I think there's some truth to that, but I also think that there's there's a skill set that some people are born with, and you can identify that. And we're giving those people opportunities. And I don't like being in the spotlight. I don't like making every decision. I want other people to get as much credit as they can and be involved as much as they can. And I think that goes down to those people that we've identified as future leaders. I think it's important, obviously, that we set the example that we've been commissioned to set, but without giving them opportunities, involvement, a say. And I think that's where we have an opportunity to maybe give them opportunities that we didn't have when we were growing up, and understanding that they may make a mistake. But for me, that's when we learn the most, is when we make those mistakes, and as long as they're not catastrophic. But yeah, we try to find opportunities for people to get involved and grow their leadership.
So one of the things that I appreciate is some people have the inherent skill, they may not have the opportunity yet. And so my advice or insight to anyone who is in that position, I was there at one point in my life where I went to the executive and said, hey, I'm smarter, etc. You should put me in leadership. I'll never forget, it was a valuable life lesson. He said, if I put you into leadership right now, no one wants to work for you. And leadership is where people really want to follow you.
Yes,
they respect you and they know you're smart, but are you really building a level of influence? Because it was all about me.
Yes.
And my early years, you get the title, you get the moment, and you really do believe it's about you. Like you've made it, right? It's no. And so it took me time to realize it wasn't about me, and it was about empowering others. And, I eat last, right? Let the associates eat first. But leadership is about empowering others. And anybody listening who would like to be in leadership, I would encourage you to really think about your peers are the ones who promote you. And quite often everybody's nice to the executive, but they need to realize that the peers, when you get promoted, should be cheering for you.
Absolutely.
Not feeling, oh my gosh, how did that happen, right? So anyway, just some insight. I love that you're
I love that, and I'm going to steal that your peers are the ones that promote you. And if you don't mind me adding something to that may speak to a young person out there that's looking to be in leadership, that someone asked me recently how my experience in the military from that leadership, how it transfers to my current position. And I had to think about that for a couple of days before I gave an answer. And my answer may be surprising, but I said that it doesn't. It doesn't transfer, because I'm a big fan of the military. But the leadership in the military is a lot of times based on the exercise of authority. And there's a reason behind that, because if you're not disciplined, if you don't follow the rules, the outcome can be pretty bad. Sure. And we're not in an environment where, fortunately, we're not in an environment where somebody's going to die if we don't follow the rules or if we're not disciplined. But in our leadership, it is so much more about support than it is about the exercise of authority. And I know as young leaders, sometimes what they crave is that authority. And so I would encourage young leaders who may be going down that path to rethink that and to view it from the standpoint of what can I do to help those around me versus I want to be the one that makes the rules.
Sage advice for anyone listening. And by the way, thank you for your service. My husband and also flew in Desert Storm.
Awesome.
So he served.
We are related, Casey.
We are related in so many ways. I know. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing you again soon.
Yes.
I can give you a big hug because I'm a hugger. I live in the South. So
absolutely.
But what a blessing it is to spend just a few minutes with you, Joey. I hope we can do this again because I'd love to actually ask you questions about the origin of how you got where you are.
Sure.
And what were all of those moments that got you to this day and those people? So if you don't mind, hopefully we can do this again.
I would love to do it again. And my example of an emotional investment that I said to you, those words were true. I have admired you since the day you came and spoke at our company, and you've been such a stable and positive force in our industry. So kudos to you and everyone at XINNIX, and thank you for what you've done for our company and for our industry as a whole.
God bless you, Joey. Thank you so much for your kind words. I'm going to not cry, but say goodbye for now. But we'll be back in touch.
Sounds good. Thanks, Casey.
Thank you.